Born on September 17, 1962, in the state of Michigan, USA, Amy Jo Knight, a petite woman living with the genetic condition achondroplasia, faced discrimination and harsh societal prejudice from the very moment she was born. Standing just over a meter tall, she was not only small in stature but was often belittled in value by those around her. Yet, in stark contrast to her physical frame, Amy's inner will stood tall, an unwavering beacon of resilience. She fought every single day to prove her worth, from elementary school classrooms where she was mocked by classmates, to the university halls where no one believed someone like her could graduate with a bachelor's degree in business from Central Michigan University. Amy proved that the size of a body is never a measure of human dignity or intellect. But her life didn't stop there. Fate led her to meet Matthew Roloff, her first husband and the most pivotal companion during the brightest chapter of her life. They married and had 4 children together: Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob. Eventually, they stepped into the spotlight of reality television with the show Little People, Big World, which premiered in 2006. Their family's story, raw, emotional, and deeply inspiring, captivated the hearts of millions for nearly 2 decades. They didn't just show the world that little people could live full lives. They made people believe that even an imperfect family could be a symbol of love, perseverance, and faith. Each episode was a slice of life. Simple laughter, moments of pain, triumphs, and quiet heartbreaks. But behind all that was laid bare before the public eye, one thing remained untold. A secret Amy had buried for over 3 decades. The earthquake named Truth, the child forgotten in the spotlight. In 2024, coinciding with the airing of the final season of Little People, Big World, just when audiences thought Amy would begin a new chapter of peace, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends, an unexpected letter appeared in the family mailbox and shattered everything. Sent by a stranger, it was brief and direct, but carried an emotional bombshell. "I am your son." No one could have imagined that Amy, a woman who had lived her entire life under the gaze of television cameras, had managed to hide such a monumental secret, that she had once been pregnant and given birth as a very young woman before meeting Matthew. A fleeting love story, filled with tears and pain, had left her with a tiny life, one she was forced to give up due to social pressure, fear of judgment, and a loneliness no one could understand. Amy had once believed she could keep that secret locked in the deepest corner of her heart forever. But that child, now a grown man, still carried a lifelong ache, still sought a simple answer. "Why didn't you keep me?" Torn and broken, the cost of silence. Amy collapsed. She was no longer the vibrant, strong woman the audience had come to know. She was a grieving mother, torn between love and guilt, between hope and fear. She wasn't afraid of losing her reputation, that had never been Amy's priority, but she feared that her son would believe she didn't love him. The truth was, she did love him. So much that she didn't dare to keep him, believing he deserved a life free from being labeled the child of an unwed dwarf mother. Amidst the emotional storm, Amy finally decided to tell the truth to Matthew, her former husband and once closest partner. But instead of understanding, she received a cold fury. For Matthew, it wasn't the child that hurt him. It was the fact that Amy had hidden the truth from him for over 30 years. "I could have forgiven what happened before me," he said, "but I cannot forgive that you didn't trust me enough to share it." He then decided to sever all remaining ties with Amy, including their shared business ventures. Once wings to each other, they now turned away like strangers. The sun from the shadows, the pain of presence. The forgotten son, whose name remains confidential for legal and personal reasons, never blamed his mother, but his very presence became an invisible blade, cutting into the hearts of the entire family. He didn't come to demand or to hurt. He simply wanted to see the face of the woman who had given him life, even just once. Yet that reunion, which should have been miraculous, turned into a cold, lonely night. Amy couldn't hold her son the way other mothers might. She was overwhelmed with shame and guilt, and that made his heart feel all the more alone. Family tremors, the silent shattering. When the secret was no longer secret, the truth spread like a dry wildfire, consuming everything. Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob, children who had once believed they knew everything about their mother, were suddenly faced with a completely unfamiliar reality. They had a half-brother. The pain didn't stem from his existence, but from the sense of betrayal and concealment. Zach, who, like his mother, also has achondroplasia, was particularly devastated. He had always seen his mother as a symbol of honesty, strength, and trust. Now that image shattered before his eyes. The family atmosphere became cold, suffocating, filled with silences no one dared to break. An empty backstage. The woman who once walked in the spotlight. After the double blow, the son's return and Matthew's final departure, Amy completely collapsed. She disappeared from media, canceled all scheduled events, and avoided everyone once close to her. She withdrew into her empty house, once filled with children's laughter, now echoing only with solitary sighs. Depression engulfed her. Mornings when she didn't want to leave bed. Dinners left cold and untouched. She once said, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of waking up one day and realizing no one needs me anymore." And now that fear loomed more real than ever. Counting days with tears. When the light goes out. Time never waits for anyone. Not even a woman who had given her whole life to love and family. For Amy, each day after the upheaval felt like a journey through thick darkness. She was no longer the lively Amy from television, but a quiet shadow drifting through joyless days, with no clear direction. Even getting up to make a cup of tea felt like a battle. One day her neighbor, once a close friend from her youth, found Amy collapsed by the window, next to a shattered family photo frame. In her hand was still the letter from her son, its trembling lines etched with sincerity. "You couldn't keep me when I was born, but I hope you can keep me in your heart from now on." Those words, instead of offering comfort, cut deep into wounds that never truly healed. Amy didn't know how to soothe herself, let alone mend the heart of a son who had grown up without his mother's love. Memories that never quiet. In solitude, memories returned like a storm. Amy recalled that fateful night when she was 18, when her first love crumbled under his family's rejection, and cruel words like, "She's unfit to be a mother, and the child will be born deformed." She remembered the journey to a maternity center in an unfamiliar town, where no one knew her true identity. The memory of childbirth never left Amy, despite her efforts to bury it under work, love, and family. She once wrote in an old journal, "I saw my baby for the first time in a nurse's arms, so tiny like an angel. I cried, not from regret, but because I knew I would live my whole life with a hole that nothing could fill." The light at the end. Quiet presence of her children. In those broken months, Molly, Amy's only daughter, was the first to return. Without judgment, she brought a hug and a whisper. "I'm sorry I didn't see the pain you once hid." Gradually, Jeremy and Jacob began visiting too. They didn't say much, but the silence was no longer a wall. It became a bridge to what was once broken. Zach, the child most bonded to Amy, was the last to return. When he finally saw his mother, he asked only, "Did you ever think of me when you thought of that child?" Amy held him tightly and sobbed, with nothing left to hide. "Yes, Zach, I thought I had to hide it to protect you. But I was wrong. Because truth never destroys, only lies do." The nameless man, the son born of shadow. Though his identity remains private, the son born from Amy's past remains an inseparable part of her new life. He lives far away, avoids the media, but still writes to her, still watches quietly from afar. In a letter to Molly, he once wrote, "I don't want to take anyone's place. I just want to know where I belong." He once tried to walk away, but blood is not a thread that can be severed in silence. There are nights when Amy writes to him, telling of springs she once waited for, of New Year's Eves she dreamed of an extra seat at the table. These letters are never answered, but Amy writes them still. Is there a way back from the abyss? Everything Amy had built, the image of a devoted mother, a woman who rose above her fate, an icon of inspiration, now feels like a distant memory. But even in ruin, one thing remains. Hope. Hope that time will heal the wounds. that her children will one day understand the pain she once carried, that the son who was lost will find his place in the family's heart, and that Matthew, though he walked away, might one day forgive not just Amy, but himself too, for letting anger destroy everything. Amy Jo Knight, the tiny woman with a great heart, lived an imperfect but honest life. And perhaps forgiveness is the final chapter she and her family must write, so the past may no longer bind them, and love can shine once more.